The next command that I want to talk about is rectangle. So let's start the part. I'm going to select top plane and I want to align to top plane by pressing Ctrl 8 and then go to rectangle. The first type of rectangle is corner rectangle. If I select that, I need to have 2 clicks, one in each corner. So this is the first one and this is the second one. Right now I have a rectangle and I can click OK and the rectangle is here. So this is a rectangle, but lines are not chained to each other. These are 4 separate lines. I can choose them by selecting one of them. I can see that the property reads line property, and I can increase or decrease the length of the line. I can move it to the place. I can change the origin, the beginning and the end of that line just by going to parameters here. And of course I can have smart dimensions to make sure that the dimensions of the lines are as I wish. The second type of rectangle is center rectangle. So I click on this, and before drawing this I want to press Ctrl key on my keyboard and then press middle mouse button so that I can pan it to the left or right or wherever I wish. I want to have some blank space here so that I can draw a center rectangle. A center rectangle needs 2 clicks again. So the first one is the center of the rectangle, and the second one, you can see the diagonal lines here. This means that this is going to be a rectangle for you, and the second click is going to finish the rectangle. For example, here I want to click here, and you can see 2 diagonal lines. Both of them are construction lines. They are coincidental in the midpoint. And I have 4 different lines that are connected to the ends of these diagonal lines. So let's find another place. I'm not going to get out of rectangle command. I can choose the rectangle that I wish from the property section, or I can again go here and select another type of rectangle. Both are going to be the same. Now if you want to have a sloped rectangle, what you need to have is a 3-point rectangle. So I select it. This is one of the corners, this is the other corner, and right now you can see that this is going to be the height of the rectangle. I click it and I have a sloped rectangle, and of course I can make it horizontal, but this one is easier to work with. And sometimes I need to align these points to some other objects, such as here. For example, this is going to be my first click. This is going to be my, for example, second click, and this is going to be my third click. And you can see there is a rectangle here. The same rectangle can be drawn from the center. So again, I'm not going to get out of rectangle command because I can just change the way I draw my rectangle here. Or again, I can go to here and select 3-point center rectangle. Both of them are going to be the same. So again, this is the center, this is the midpoint, and this is the end point. So I have 3 clicks in center, midpoint, and end point of one of the lines, and a sloped rectangle is going to be drawn for me. The final thing here is a parallelogram. Again, I can select it from here, or I can go to the command and select parallelogram from the command. This one as a rectangle, but the lines are not going to be vertical, perpendicular to each other. This is the first click, this is the second click, and I can have a third click anywhere I wish. And I have a parallelogram. Just you should see that there are relations that make sure that 2 of the lines are parallel to each other, and these other lines are parallel to each other. And that's it. So these are different types of rectangle. In this section I want to show you how you can draw an ellipse. If I go to Sketch tab, I can find ellipse here. I can choose one of the planes, such as top plane. I am going to be normal to that, so I click on this icon. Now you can see that this is normal to top plane. As an alternative, you can select the command and then select the plane that you want to draw on. Again, as an alternative, Ctrl 8 takes you to the normal view of that plane. Okay, now I click on the ellipse command. And what I'm going to do is to select a point as the center. So I just click here for the center of this ellipse. Now I have to click for major axis here, for example, and minor axis here, for example, and that creates an ellipse. Now I can click on this OK button here. Now if I want to change the properties of this, I can click on that. Now you can see on the property I have the length of the major axis and the minor axis, and also I can go for the origin. The major axis and the minor axis are selected by radius, so you are not going to use the diameter. So the radius is going to be, for example, 4 for the major axis and 1.5 for the minor axis. And again, I can make sure that this is aligned to the origin or to any other point, or I can leave it here. What I'm going to do is to make it coincident with the origin. So I click on here, press Ctrl, and click on the origin. Now you can see there is a coincident option here. I click on coincident and this goes to the origin. And again, you do not have to have it center in the origin. This is your choice. I click on OK, and that's it. Now let's draw another one. This one was horizontal. I can have it vertical or in any other direction that I want to have. So I just click on this one. What I'm going to do is to click here as the center. This is the major radius, this is the minor radius. Now you can see that this is different from what we had previously. So again, I can go and change the dimensions. I just click on OK. That's OK for me. What I'm going to do is to draw an oblique one. So I click on this, click here for the center. This one, I want to have it in this angle. Click here and click here. Now I have another ellipse. This one, I don't know the angle. If I go to the parameter sheet, you can see that there is nothing to tell me what the angle of the major axis or the minor axis is. So how can I make sure that the angle is a certain amount of, a certain number? I can use center line. So what I'm going to do is to go for center line command, and I want to draw one line in this direction, and I want to choose center line once again and draw a line, and make sure that this line goes from the center of the ellipse to one of the quadrants. You can see that this quadrant can be selected, or this one, or this one, or this one, whichever you wish. For example, I want to select this one, and click on this quadrant and press escape to get out of the command. Now this center line is horizontal. If it is not, I can just constrain it to be horizontal. I can see this horizontal relation here. So what I'm going to do is to choose the smart dimension command here, that I'm going to talk about this in detail in another section, and select this line and this line. By selecting these two lines, I can see an angle here. Now by clicking on that, I can change the angle. For example, I want it to be 60 degrees, so that's going to be 60 degrees. If I want to change it, I can do it. Double click on that. I want it to be 45 degrees, so I type 45, and that's it. This is aligned in a 45 degree. Okay, there are other types of ellipse that I want to talk about. So let's pan a little bit and go to ellipse command. Now you can see there is another option for drawing a partial ellipse. This one is very nice. I click on that. Again, what I'm going to do is to have the center, then the major axis, then the minor axis, and this minor axis, when I click on that, I should make sure that this is the place that I wanted to start. Now if in any direction I can go in this direction, or I can go in this direction, and you can see that if this is not what I want, I just go back over the line once again and start drawing like this. Now I just want it to be this much, for example this much, and I click here. Now let's go for the properties, and again you can see that I have the center of this ellipse. I can align it to any point. I have the start coordinate, that's going to be this, and I have the end coordinate, that's going to be this point. I have a major axis radius, and I have the minor axis radius, and finally I have the angle, and this angle is not the angle of the central lines. This is not the angle of the axis. This is the angle of the arc. Actually, this is kind of an arc that we are drawing. I can make it more or less. For example, this is 94 degrees. If I want it, I can make it 60 degrees, and you can see that this changes. If I click on OK, now the angle is going to be 60 degrees. Just make sure that this is selected, and now I can go and select another point. To select the angle, of course, you cannot change it from here. What you need to do is to change the coordinates of the start and the end, and this determines the angle of the arc that you are drawing. If I click on here and hold it, you can see that I can move it, and this increases the angle of the arc. Now if I let go of that and click on OK, and now select it, you can see the angle is about 129 degrees. So if I increase or decrease the length of the arc by just grabbing and dragging the endpoints of this is going to increase the angle. So if I try to make it 60 degrees, you can see that this doesn't work unless you change the position of the endpoint or the start point. So once again, you can use the center lines. If I go here and select center line, what I'm going to do is to click here and go to the center, and this is one center line, and I want to click on the center and drag to the right, but make sure that this is horizontal. Now again, I can change the angle of the axis by going to Smart Dimension and selecting these two, 1 and 2. You can see that I have the angle. What I'm going to do is to make sure that this is 45 degrees, and this changes the angle of the axis for me. Now we have other types of ellipses here. One of them is parabola, and the other one is conic. So let's start with parabola. What I'm going to do is to click here, and then you can see that this is the center of the parabola. So whatever direction I want to have, this will help me. You can see there is an axis that goes to the center of the parabola, and what I'm going to do is to click here. This is going to be the center of the line. Now I need a start point, and then I need an end point. Now this is the parabola with this center, and this is the center point that I clicked for. This is the midpoint actually. This is not the center point, so I just call it the midpoint. So what are the properties for that? You can see that there's a start coordination again. There's a end coordination here. There is a center coordination, and of course there's a midpoint that's called apex. Actually, that's apex. Oh god, I didn't remember that. The name was so complex to me. That was the apex. So we have center, we have apex, we can move all of them. So what I'm going to do is to click on this OK. Now if I hold one of these endpoints and drag that, you can see that this is going to change the length of the parabola. And if I want to move this, I can grab the center of the parabola and move it wherever I wish. If I want to hold the apex, I can make it far or closer. You can see that this changes the shape of my parabola. This one I want it to be like this. And again, if I want to have an angle, I can do that using the center line. I go to center line, I just click here and go to the right. I want to make sure that this is horizontal because I'm going to measure this from a horizontal line. And again, I click here and go to the apex, and that's it. Now what I'm going to do is to select the Smart Dimensions and make sure that these two lines are selected, and that's the angle that I want to change. For example, to 120 degrees, and that's it. This changes the angle of my parabola. So let's go for the conic command here. If I go here and select conic, now that's going to have one click here, and you can see again this is a little different from what we had in parabola. I click here for the second one, and now for the third one, and the fourth click is going to be, for example, here. Now we have a conic, and a conic has some properties, and you can see, go by clicking on parameters. I have a start point, I have an end point, I have the shoulder, and I have the vertex. So we have different options for conic. And of course I have the RHO parameter, and finally the radius of the curvature. So if I want to click on OK, if I want to change the shape, again I can grab these, make them longer or shorter. I can grab this and move this. And again, I don't know what they are, but you will know when you work with them. And of course you can go for here and move the whole conic to the different places on your screen.